First of all, I just wanted to say what an honor it is to be here and at the World Government Summit, and it's such a pleasure to share the panel with you, Becky, and with Rainer. One of my favorite brands is the Four Seasons. It's a hotel chain that I respect and I love a lot. Look, when we speak about tourism, I think tourism is only growing, and it's growing year on year. And the UN Tourism, we overlook and we serve 160 member states from 5 different regions. And from the regions that we serve, we do see growth. But it's very important for us to ensure that the traveler has one journey. And there has to be one source that connects airports, hotels, and policy institutions. And my point is, having data collected from, and there's no, it's not difficult now, with how things are evolving, how technology is evolving, and how digital innovation is evolving. Data is key for us to ensure that, number one, the traveler feels safe to travel. The traveler gets the right experience through this data, because I think I come from hospitality background. I've been in hotels all my life, and it's very important for us that the customer or the traveler leaves with an unforgettable experience. And this is what matters, because that's what's going to stay with the traveler, is number one, the impression and the reputation.
That sort of narrative is baked into the DNA of the Four Seasons. There is absolutely no doubt about that. I share your love of the brand, Shaikha, as well. Rainer, you have said that the future of travel depends on cross-sector alignment. And when you talk about that cross-sector alignment, I'm assuming you're talking about airports, airlines, hotels, destinations. What do you think is the weakest link at this point? And to Shaikha's point, how do we address this?
You're putting me on the spot with the weakest link, but thank you for having me. Great pleasure to be here. I truly don't know that is one link that's missing. I think we ultimately know there are certain systems, and I think a lot of those are coming along, and we see nice progress in the enablers that are necessary to formulate that path along that Shaikha is expressing, and that safety element is essential, right? Coming back to your question, volatility aside, whether individuals clearly want to travel. And to that extent, I'm very optimistic and I'm very positive that we will continue to see strength in that sector. And I would say individuals like to travel despite all the hurdles that we often put in their way. And when we speak of an ecosystem, there clearly are a number of links that we need to strengthen to make access a lot easier, with the right safety in mind, to ensure that once you arrive in a destination, you truly feel welcomed. And I think in the context, we often speak about technology that's necessary, but ultimately, and perhaps back to your question, we need to make sure that public sector and private sector truly find a forum to actively exchange how to move forward in integrating these different aspects that make it happen.
Yeah, what does that look like?
We're there for it. The UN Tourism is a convener. So we have access to 160 member states and decision makers across 5 different regions. So this is, so going back, and I'd like to take this opportunity and maybe and let Rainer know more about what our plans are for in terms of collaboration. Collaboration is one of the priorities I have outlined from at the beginning of my mandate, and particularly because of the access we have to decision makers and ministers. We can advocate for the right policies, but we cannot do that without the private sector. We need to find ways to create the right synergies between the private and the public sector. And that can be done with the UN Tourism. What do you think?
I would certainly agree, and yet I think we're all aware of the complexity. We had an earlier conversation. It's all about how we bring these pieces together, and I think individually we all have the answers. Again, much of the technology is coming along. Ultimately, though, we do need that leadership, and that's on us in the private sector most certainly as well the case. We need the necessary investments in order to move that forward, but we know what's necessary. We need to get it. We need to get it done.
Okay, well, you have a mandate, and you are, throwing the doors open and saying, "Come on in, we can talk." Let's talk about where we see growth areas and why. You have said, Raina, that you see luxury travelers as wanting fewer, more meaningful moments. So I want to hear from you how you are making those moments accessible. And on the wider sort of story, I do want to understand how technology, which we see embedded increasingly in systems, will ultimately enhance the traveller experience while ensuring that this human-to-human sort of relationship that we all expect when we travel, continues. Let's start with growth. Last year we saw double-digit growth. Shaikha in Brazil up 37%, Egypt 20%, Morocco 14%, Seychelles 13%. The GCC certainly a growth region in 2026. With Asia, you spent a lot of time there yourself. What separates, to both of you, the winners from the rest at this point? We've talked about how it's important that the private and public sector work better together. I'm thinking about connectivity and visas and marketing. It's clear that those are great shapers for success for some of these countries that we've seen listed here. Is it something, though, deeper than that? I just want to get to where you see the real sort of opportunities at this point.
I think it's proper planning, Becky. Planning is what those countries have. Planning is key for them to advance their tourism sectors in their respective destinations. They have to plan, and they have to plan right. They have resources, and they have access to different organizations. Let's say UN Tourism, OECD, they have ICAO, they have IATA. All those are key international organizations that have a lot of data and that have a lot of the right best practices and benchmarks that are there for them. And those are tools for them to find the right fit wherever relevant to their destinations and see how they can, go from there.
Okay, and that I understand, and leaning into those tools may quite possibly be the key differentiator for these countries listed as real success stories in 2026. It's more than that, isn't it?
I would differentiate motivation of travel and enablement of travel.
Good point.
Because you were kind of going in both directions. And when you look at a growth and success story, certainly in 2025, but for a good number of years now, I would add Japan. And I think on the motivation for travel, clearly it's the authenticity, it's the understanding of real experiences, it's the understanding of immersion in a completely different culture. It's that we speak of a value mindset rather than just a volume driver. And that certainly when you look at growth in that sector, we've in recent years seen that the luxury, ultra luxury segment has grown more, I think, for these particular reasons. When you look at the enablement, then we come back again to safety. How easy is it for me to arrive? And if I may say, at times I'm still surprised that you have countries with tourism bureaus, offices that spend millions and millions, and then you arrive in the country and you're not necessarily being welcomed, but rather questioned as to why you would travel. Yeah. And I always feel, let's make sure that as a traveler you feel welcomed to a country, appreciated for having that interest to going somewhere and to integrating yourself into what that country has to offer.
Let's talk about experiences, meaningful moments. I mean, it's to a degree easier for an organisation like yours, luxury. To a degree, there are certain expectations, and you know that. Although clearly, you've got to execute on those expectations. Give me some tangible examples of what you're doing with Four Seasons that ensures that you are absolutely delivering those meaningful moments. What do they look like? What's the feedback from the traveller? What do they look like in 26 and beyond?
We clearly see that increasingly, going back to my earlier point, is key motivation for travel and certainly for guests coming to Four Seasons. It takes a wide range depending on where you are, but I would reference farms that you can really engage with, be it in a couple of our resorts in Mexico and even in Mauritius. It goes to harvesting in a rice field that's part of our resort in Chiang Mai in Thailand. But then there's the educational element, really, with curated tours to get to know locals, to understand a little bit more the environment that we operate in. We haven't spoken yet about the element of sustainability, and for us to really, in a meaningful way, bring this across where the traveler also feels they understand a little bit more about the country. They see that our products are locally sourced. They see our efforts to reduce waste that easily is avoided.
Let's talk very specifically about Four Seasons, expanding, for example, across the Red Sea, Amala, Neom, and into yachting. How do you grow in fragile environments without overdeveloping them? What does that? Sustainability can mean a lot of things, and it's kind of thrown out there. So what does it really mean in the DNA of Four Seasons? And for example, this area very specifically with such a fragile environment.
So Four Seasons, and let me reiterate, we're a private company. We grow, but we don't grow at all cost. I firmly believe we're quite thoughtful about this process and look very specifically at every individual property in its respective market. We've seen over the years, again, using different examples of coming to Nowais and really becoming the key employer of the island and transforming and to some extent humbly helping to put the island on the map. I remember when we early on, not so far from here, went into Cairo and Egypt and Sharm el-Sheikh, where certainly in Sharm, we yet again had an impact. And there, when we opened Koh Samui in Thailand, we had a similar effect there. And so we're being very thoughtful as to how do we bring in young people that are locally recruited? How do we call it Four Seasons for Good, where we've particularly been focused on cancer research now for well over 50 years, and where we engage with local hospitals, where we do make sure we work with vendors and individuals in that respective location. And again, we make sure that this is to an appropriate extent known to the traveler and to the visitors to that resort or even an urban location.
This issue of sustainability is going to be absolutely sort of front and center for you in the role that you now have, Shaikha. Are we seeing enough public-private collaboration to truly redesign tourism for sustainability? I mean, we've just heard good examples, tangible examples of what can be done.
I think if you have the right policies, you can advocate for them. And this all goes back to the needs and the requirements of the destinations and how well aware are they of what's needed and how can it be implemented and at what cost. So I believe if they see the right results, the right outcomes out of those initiatives, they will be more than happy to implement. But this is exactly going back to my point about collaboration. And as I start my mandate, private and public sector collaboration is key. And we cannot do it alone. We just can't.
I'm very interested specifically in sustainability, given that we have seen this year many European countries protesting against mass tourism.
Okay.
How worried are you about that?
I'm not, because you know what? I just came back from Brussels, and I was invited by the European Commissioner for Travel and Transport, and we discussed exactly that topic. And there's a lot that has been implemented, and a lot of growing European destinations like Dubrovnik and Rome, where they don't want to call it over-tourism because it's not. It's how you handle tourism flows. And you have the right tools, again, through the right technology. I'll give you an example, Becky, for Dubrovnik, because I think they have done it amazingly. They have something called the Dubrovnik Pass. And particularly in destinations that attract a lot of tourists because of one of them TV shows, I think Game of Thrones was filmed there. So they have implemented the right tools to monitor closely flows, tourists that come in through this website, where you cannot enter without buying a pass. But this pass allows you to enter several attractions in that destinations. But it kind of has real-time data to know how much of the flows are in destination A, for example, and knowing how much of them will buy or have bought tickets to go in. This allows them to manage the destination in a very seamless manner. And it's proven to be very successful, because not only did it ensure that the traveler would have the best experience, but also the communities living in Dubrovnik are happy with it.
Well, I mean, if that's a model, then it's
so
one
this
that
is something through
maybe
us we want to see how we can grab on those opportunities and those technologies, and see how we can properly scale them up where and when relevant.
You're talking about technology here playing a real role as a game changer in the business across the board, and it is increasingly shaping travel. We know apps, data, personalization. How do you balance efficiency, Raina, with the human touch that really does define luxury travel?
100%. We see that technology entirely as an enabler rather than a replacer of certain...
Yeah, I don't want to see robots doing everything in my Four Seasons hotel going forward. I'm happy that it might be going on behind the scenes, but don't tell me they're going to welcome me anytime soon.
I'm relieved to know your expectations, and we certainly share those. And in fact, we see where technology, again, enables what we do, allows us to actually really focus on the guest. And Four Seasons, we're all about a very guest-centric approach, and the more we provide our team members with the right tools, the better they'll be in their job, and the more time they'll actually have to focus on the guest. We know that particularly with that technology, generally, and I say generally because a guest that arrives at 3 a.m. after a 12-hour flight probably doesn't want to talk necessarily to a human, or at least not for very much. But ultimately, we see that longing and that interest for belonging, for recognition, for true care, to recognize they know me, I met her as an individual, and they truly look after me. Because whether you travel on leisure or you need to for business, you're out there on the road, you're often separated from others, even though we see a lot of growth in multifamily travel, for instance. I guess it's precisely for those reasons that individuals look for that. Ultimately, it's belonging, and we're there to provide that and to truly show our care.
We've got 2 minutes. We'll leave those last 2 minutes for a brief discussion about the UAE. I live here, I work here. I've seen the evolution of this place over the years. It's been 13 years that I've lived here now. So through my sort of lens as a resident and lens as a journalist, it has been quite the most phenomenal experience. As far as the tourism sort of story is concerned here, hugely important in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in Iraq, and across the other Emirates, of course. So take your WTO hat off just for a moment, or perhaps leave it on. But as an Emirati, where do you see the opportunities here going forward?
I think everywhere, but we need to stay authentic. I think I always say, coming from the industry, and now that I see a lot of Emiratis joining the tourism industry, I feel it makes me feel so proud, because I feel no one can represent the UAE better than UAE nationals, because they are the best ambassadors. They're the best ambassadors to people that are, coming, seeking joy, seeking experience, seeking harmony, and knowing more about the culture, knowing more about our gastronomy, which is amazing. So I think it's very important for us to stay authentic, stay true, and just be ourselves to the traveler, because that's and I don't know if Rainer would agree with me on this. Authenticity is key, and it's very important for us to find ways to sustain and keep that.
As we talk about sort of the overarching sort of theme of this was culture and experience, its impact, how you ultimately sort of leverage that. You've got a lot of business here in the UAE. Your closing thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. And frankly, for me coming here, I truly always consider it a treat. The energy that it provides you with.
It's true.
And most definitely authenticity is key. What I find wonderful, impressive here, given that every country can bring that across in a different way, the UAE does it in a very contemporary way to me, in a very forward-looking way.
In a natural way.
But at the same time, in a natural way. And so I certainly feel that authenticity, and I think you have a lot to be proud of. We always learn a lot here, and yes, Four Seasons, we've been present in this market for quite a while. It's done us well. We feel very much at home here. We see continued growth. And again, just that learning curve, and I'm sure that's for others as well, the way you can absorb information, people, and that energy is very, very special.
Well, I live very close to one of your new projects in Abu Dhabi on Sadia Island, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing the completion of that. And with that, you will be a huge inspiration to a lot of those young Emiratis that you're talking about as being ambassadors for this country. So congratulations. We're very much looking forward to you in this role, and to both of you for this really good discussion this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much.